What though, June? I just ruined it. You know how I like to surprise you by going
Uh-huh.
live, and I made the mistake of going, "Hey, let's go live
I
early."
rather
caught
than
it
just
this
like doing
time.
it.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
let's
getting
pretend.
smart.
Uh, hey, let's pretend nobody's listening yet. We can keep talking.
they'll,
So,
and
Oh
they'll
no.
think they'll think they're in on something.
right, right. So, hello, internet. How are you? You've been peeking through the
Hello.
window again, internet.
Hi,
So,
internet.
so we have
Okay,
a
that's
friend
just
of
a little
ours.
creepy.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's well, it should work both ways. It's but we have the infamous David Haynie, Dave Haynie, Hazy Dave Haynie, or just Haynie as we
Or just
call him.
Haynie.
So he's with us tonight, and we're going to talk probably a lot of Amiga stuff since I have no idea. So what it is June's tired of me making up stories, so we had to get like real stories back on. So how you doing
Well, I mean,
tonight,
if you
brother?
want.
Oh, you want me to make some up? Let's see. Well, you can't make up this shit. If I told you about a middle manager named Julian, you would not believe
you would
me.
not believe. No.
No. It's
And
we all did a Julian impression.
Well, you're leaving me hanging now. I have to know.
Yeah, I has to know. So Dave, can you believe they're still playing with Amigas all this time? Weren't you just in Germany?
I was just in Germany at the Amiga 38 festival, and they're not just making Amigas; they're making new Amigas with new features, with new. They have there's one company that has their own 68,000 core, which is faster than anything Motorola ever made.
Is it
not
the
only
Vampire?
the Vampire, yes, it's got
nice.
not only that, it's got more advanced graphics, and it lives on an FPGA, and it's powered by a USB plug. Yeah, I think of like all the power we used to have. It's like, wow. Yeah.
Well, I knew back then.
Yep.
I knew back then that the difference between TTL high 2.4 volts and 5 volts would have to go away someday. Was just a big band of wasted power.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
meanwhile, I couldn't keep stuff below 0.4 volts worth of crap.
Yeah, it's kind of funny now that we've got stuff running at like 1 volt or less.
Yes. At 80 amps,
Well, there's that. Yeah, I don't deal with anything that powerful, but I mean, these days I'm working with with PCIe and GigE and all that sort of thing, all this low voltage stuff.
Right, but you get a 48 port gig E and you do the math, and
you do that. Yeah.
Oh, 80 amps, 100 amps through 1 volt.
Yeah. I have.
So you're designing equipment like that?
I'm not doing 80 ports. I'm doing mobile radio stuff. So I've got I've got one system with a total of 9 PCIe ports.
Wow.
Each is just 1X, but I'm dealing with radio cards, and the wireless is only now getting fast enough to need PCI 3, much less multiple links.
Wow.
Right. And do you
so not Wi-Fi then?
Well, it's Wi-Fi hardware. We have our own layer 1 and layer 2, but it's Wi-Fi physical drivers, and we can run Wi-Fi hotspots over it, but our mesh is completely proprietary.
Is the layer 2 an encrypted layer? Is that
we can do we can do encryption. Yeah, we could do. I mean, it depends on what you're doing, but yeah, there's encryption. We actually have a division of the company out in Arizona that does encryption for like hard encryption for like military stuff.
Right.
And
those guys are weird.
That's actually that's
we can talk about them. They're not here now.
That's why we keep them in Arizona. They want to make a chip. I'm like, are we getting back to chips?
So
that's some of the stuff I'm doing now, actually.
Chips.
So
Yeah.
June did the operating system for the Coral TPU. And June, I wanted to get back to you because I was trying to picture, because I asked you, what's a TPU? I was picturing one or more systolic arrays being pumped by multiply accumulate channels. Is that
That's a TPU.
because that could
Well,
also
and that's the edge TPU, I should say.
Okay.
yeah, but right. And it does. What made me think of that, you hit it on the head, is it's a piece of math. And I'm like, oh yeah, math.
Math.
Yeah. Although in this case, it's actually pretty easy. It's just you've just got a whole bunch of these things, just multipliers that are just chunking across and then going down to actually accumulate.
Right.
And it's multiplication and addition. So it's not like you have to really stretch your brain that much.
No, it looked like a
it's
convolution engine to me.
Huge scale.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Scale. Yeah.
Right.
Not as crazy as a GPU though. And not as crazy as that blitter. Sorry, the copper, not the blitter.
The copper.
Yes, the copper.
That's
pretty cool.
What was it I was thinking of? They finally got something to work. Well, ray tracing down at a chip level is getting more and more. Yeah, I looked into that in depth one time. It was wild.
So you mentioned that they've got better graphics in these vampires. What exactly are they doing? Are they doing like 3D or is it all 2D stuff?
They've got some 3D. They've got some 3D stuff going into there. They've got all the graphics modes that you'd want. 32-bit chunky pixels and that sort of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what's in there. I know that they have also got video decoding on a 68,000 system. They can do AVC in high definition. And what they did was very cool. They They had a guy who was coding really tight video decompression algorithms, and they basically said, "What instructions do you want?" And since their CPU is an FPGA, he gets whatever instructions he wants.
Right.
So, but they've implemented some sort of. They've also got a vector instruction set in there. I don't know if it was unique or if they took AltaVec or SSE or anything like that. But it's so it's pretty impressive, and they're also talking about making a chip at some point. We'll have to see. But right now they've got the fastest Amiga ever made. There are also a lot of people making rebuilding. Well, we've seen this with the C128 too. They're rebuilding C128s and Amigas with new motherboards because parts on the old motherboards, particularly capacitors, but things just start fading. And if somebody doesn't do something, we run out of computers at some point. So I was really happy. I met years ago. I met Chucky, who's been doing the Re-Amigas, and in fact, somewhere around here, I have an Amiga 3000 Re-Amiga board, and I noticed they've been doing they a couple of years after that they had Jeff Porter in Germany and presented him with the bright red A500 motherboard.
Right.
Nice.
In a nice frame and everything. It was pretty cool. So it's like it's just weird that the community has kind of taken over development. I know the Vampire stuff is a lot of that's based on ROS, the open source Amiga OS, because that was the other thing when I started looking into this stuff and trying to give a gentle nudge to the people actually getting the work done, since I wasn't full-time Amiga anymore. I'm like, you have to come up with things that can change. We can, it's great to run the old software and everything, but if you can't change the operating system, then it's going to be real hard to change the hardware, and you're going to need to change the hardware.
Right.
You're going to need to make new hardware. You're going to need to make it, at least, it doesn't necessarily have to be as fast as a PC, but it needs to be fast enough for people who use it to be happy that they're using it. And it can't just be for hobbyists. It needs to be for people who, and so somebody gave me, I think it was a Firefox for the Amiga now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah. It's well, that's pretty
way
impressive.
Better than Eyebrows.
Yeah. Well, and when I was in Germany at making Metabox, we made we basically got the what the heck, which one is Voyager? We got the Voyager browser people. We basically said, look, we want to hire you. going to pay you to bring it up to level 4 at the time, which is what you need at HTML4. And all we want is exclusive rights to use it on our set-top box. You can keep everything. So, our operating system was basically an Amiga-like operating system. In fact, you'll find a bunch of people who left Commodore and built new projects with Amiga-like operating systems. That was actually the first one. The second one, my company, I had a company called Nomadio that made an RC car controller. And it was, even though it was only 16-bit, the operating system that lived on that was basically an Amiga clone.
So was it just exec or something more?
It had exec and it had some other bits in it. It didn't have a full graphics library or anything because it was just an LCD screen. But yeah, there was a lot of like real development that lasted, and so we were trying, like, with our set-top box, the whole UI was based on it had an intuition layer, it had layers and everything like that. But the user interface was all MUI plus HTML, and you could actually add new graphics functions in HTML if you wanted to build custom HTML. So like we could open so I found a VGA-ish chip that had 2 channels of graphics of a video overlay. So we could actually open up a window of any size in HTML that gave us video overlay from the hardware video.
Nice.
That was a weird era. It was just like trying to figure out, like, okay, I can't build chips anymore. What weird shit have people done in things that I can get my hands on? And it turned out that it was actually some interesting stuff, because our whole idea was we weren't building a new personal computer. We were building a living room computer, which is something that Commodore talked about and even worked. I mean, that was where CD-TV was headed.
Right.
And
there you go.
Okay. That was the Amiga 3000 Plus. Oh, there we go. CD-TV.
Well, this is actually CD32. This is the last one.
Yeah, CD32.
TV was before my time, actually.
Yeah.
When she says before her time, I don't know if she means she wasn't born yet or not.
So I got into Amigas through a friend who had an Amiga 600, and he showed me Shadow of the Beast 3. Mind you, at the time, I was used to things from the demo scene, so like Future Cruise, Second Reality, and all that kind of stuff on the PC. So when I saw the Amiga doing the same level of crazy colors and graphics and capabilities like in there through that game, I was hooked. I had to play more. I had to work with it more and understand how it worked. And ever since then, it's just been like, okay, I have to know more. I got to get writing some code on these things.
Yeah. So somebody asked about Amiga 3000 Plus. So that was basically, you take the Pandora chipset, or Amiga, what all the marketing people called AGA, and put that in an A3000. Then you take an AT&T DSP3210 and make that run as a coprocessor. So it's sharing it's sharing all of memory. It wasn't like the DSPs they put on like the SGIs or whatever, or the Next machine, where it was just it was basically a peripheral chip. This was a full-fledged coprocessor. That part could do 32-bit math 10 times faster than the 68040.
True dual port RAM.
It was a bus master. It was sharing with the 68000.
Right, so but it's arbitrating so fast that it could get to
it could get to all of our memory, and it also had on-chip RAM, so it could do all the really tight real-time stuff on chip. And it had a multitasking operating system that meshed perfectly with Amiga OS. And so one day we had looked at this chip, and it was Jeff Porter's idea. He had found out about it, and he was like, Dave, you got to put this in there. I'm like, yes, I do. We went to so we went to AT&T in Pennsylvania, and we were like, okay, we want this chip, and we want all your software that goes with it, basically for as cheap as we can get it. And they're like, they didn't know what we were doing with it. Their idea was, we're going to sell you this chip and a specific block of software to replace a big pile of hardware, because big pile of analog hardware. And like, no, this is a resource. We're putting this in here. It doesn't do anything right out of the box, so we need all the software to give it. So we we wound up getting everything but the 9600 baud modem for $5 a unit.
Wow.
Including a
Wow.
2400
Commodore price. Yeah.
Including a 2400 baud modem program. So then I had a 16-bit regular stereo audio codec, ADC, DAC, and then I had a second one, which is a 15-bit phase correcting chip in mono, specifically for doing telephone stuff, and that was going to be capable of doing at least 9600 baud. So you were going to be able to plug your phone. And of course, this is another Jeff Porter influence because he had been our modem guy anyway. And it's like, we were starting to understand just how important, being online was going to be.
Right.
This was in 1991. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like it was a foregone conclusion yet. We're still a few years away from the web, but
and still using coax.
This was
in 91.
This was Twist
91.
This is POTS. We weren't using.
I'm thinking 81. Yeah. I'm thinking 81. No, I'm sorry.
No,
I do that from time to time.
We were just using phone lines at this point. We were just using the old basic POTS line because nobody had they hadn't maxed that out yet, and we didn't have a network connection in a machine until the AAA system. I put in a low cost network there too that you just hook together with RCA jacks.
That's brilliant.
It was using an ArcNet chip. Well, the best thing about the RCA jack is it worked a little bit like the 10 base 2 whatever it was, the old one, the old coax Ethernet. Except those you always had to deal with terminators and everything.
Right.
On this one, they were switched jacks. So when the plug was out, it was terminated, and you plug it in, it wasn't terminated. So it was totally consumer friendly. You had two plugs. You plug one of those into something you wanted to network to. Somebody wanted to network to you, they plug one in. It was only 2.5 megabits per second, but that wasn't bad for 1993.
2.5. That's actually better than 10 base 2. 10 base 2 was 1 megabit.
I think you could get up to 10
just flat out. Was it 10? Okay,
I think maybe you could get up to 10 megabits. Well, it didn't even matter that much, but that was the first network we had at Commodore.
Yeah.
Very cool. So did you expect to see things like the Ariadne Ethernet Zorro card?
Oh, I expected all those things to show up eventually because it's getting real easy. I mean, heck, you could throw a Raspberry Pi on a Zorro card and do something with it if you wanted to for not all that much money.
Little secret, I've got one of those in there.
I wouldn't be surprised just because it's come down so it's become so cheap and so commodified for some of these like little hobbyist devices, especially at the volumes that Amiga commands these days.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So June just
mentioned
put in. I'm going to talk about your POTS line real quick, but what were you going to say?
Oh no. Well, I was actually going to ask about if Dave, if you are familiar with the 0 to ASIC course or any of the modern chip manufacturing stuff that's supposed to be more democratized for individuals to grab into?
No, actually I don't.
You haven't heard of it? Oh, crap. No. Okay. Google has partnered with...
Go ahead. I was going to say they're doing for free what we used to do in the basement. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like 130 nanometer, I think. But so it's like really, really old stuff. But they give you essentially, as long as your design is open source, they will guarantee you a spot on a shuttle. And you can actually have a chip made with test chips and breakout boards.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm trying to spread the word on that one because like you said, like all these chips are dying, but if, maybe we have a little more room, we can maybe respin a SID chip with that extra fourth channel. Or maybe some newer Agneses or whatever.
Well, not only that, a lot of these FPGA designs have been around for a long time. They're still emulating, they're not emulating, they're still replicating a design that was done in 2 micron NMOS or something. So 130 nanometer. Oh man, that's paradise.
That's like ants. So hey, was 3DO one of those places that did the Amiga like software, or did they start from scratch?
I don't actually know that much about their software, but they did have a lot of Amiga software people there.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
In fact, Dave Needle and R.J. Michael came out to Pennsylvania one time to invite me to go work for them, and I was still thrashing away. Well, it was two problems. I was still thrashing away with trying to not believe Commodore was going under, even though I was pretty sure it was at the time, and my wife was pregnant with child and did not really fancy a move just then.
The person with the common sense was throwing an NMI.
Yeah, I really should have not. Yeah, I really should have gone, even though I know it didn't last. But boy, that would have been a blast. And I was just hanging out with my friend RJ over in Germany. In fact, I just sent him a box of hot peppers, which hopefully gets to California before they spoil.
Right.
But
or get hotter.
Today was the closing of my garden.
Oh.
It's getting
because it's just too cold now, or
it's just starting to get to that point. I left one ghost pepper plant up because it's full of green fruit, but it's like at this point you don't really know if anything's going to ripen if there's enough heat and enough sun for it to ripen. So I harvested everything that was good.
So I bought every card. Yeah. And
it's funny about that. So the guy I work with over at SamSat, his name is David Monroe, and actually he worked at not Data General, dagnabbit. Yes, it was Data
DG.
Data Point. Excuse me.
Data Point.
He worked at Data Point, and they invented ArcNet. So he's been filling my head with all the stories of how they built those chips and how they built the implementation of it and what they used to do with that. And so hearing you talk about using ArcNet in an Amiga is just sort of dovetailing all in there.
Yeah. Well, it was we had a chip we could get starting at $5. So who knows what it would have been by the time we were actually in production. It was great and it was buffered and
sure, yeah.
It was I was able to hook it in there without much trouble.
Whatever happened to the token ring card that Kong Su was working on?
Well, I think I think part of the problem was Kung Su and what did he ever accomplish?
Finish, yeah.
Yeah,
but what happened? Did it just fade? Do you think?
I guess so. I never really. I mean, I sort of knew of its existence, but I never heard of it actually doing anything or being used by anybody.
Clearing any milestones or anything.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help that Token Ring wasn't the direction everybody went in.
Right. Oh,
well, I had to maintain Token Ring networks. I'm glad it didn't take off.
I mean, I think the original Apollo system we had was Token Ring.
Right. So I've had a few people tell me lately, Dave, that I really screwed up. I should have built an 8086 or an 8088 instead of a Z80.
Oh, I've heard that too.
And run DOS. It's I don't even think I had seen a DOS machine.
Probably, they came out in '81, but they were like $5,000.
Yeah,
it was not exactly our market, and I'm not sure I'd seen one by then either. I mean, eventually we had them for doing PAL.
Yeah,
we had one in the lab for doing PALs because it ran couple.
I still run win couple every now and then to do some little dinky thing.
Oh man, if I can't program in VHDL, I'm just not going to do it.
You're one of those.
I guess I'd have to go to couple if I needed to, but
so too good for Verilog, huh?
I'm okay with Verilog too.
So I took a short stint at DeVry, and my first introduction to programmable devices was CPLDs, and we were doing it all in couple.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to tear my hair out because I was like, there's got to be a better way.
It's arcane, but it's like learning to fly stick and rudder. Once you get it.
Hey, compared to Palasm,
I can imagine.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was great. We really didn't complain about it back then. It was good.
No, we thought it was great.
Yeah.
We're like, I can program logic for only $2 per chip.
Yeah.
Which was a lot.
It was a lot. Well, on a consumer
especially if
machine,
you multiply by 1,000.
or a million,
or a million. Yeah, yeah, a million.
And it's the handling cost of the dang thing. It's like 40 cents for the chip, 60 cents to put it in, take it out, program, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Could you get them pre-programmed from the manufacturer if you had enough volume?
I think the answer is yes, and then I think we would have looked at a hard code too, just because of who we were. Yeah.
It depends on what they were using for. Most of the projects at Commodore I used PALs for were not high enough volume to warrant that.
Right.
They were some of the Zorro cards and the CPU cards and things like that were, at those points they weren't actually that concerned about the cost of them because they were charging you way too much for them anyway.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
The culture of Trammell was gone at that point, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't actually. There was even a PAL on the on a couple of the motherboards, but it was needed for high speed decode, and we were talking about like 5 nanosecond PALs or something like that. It was that it was something that a Commodore chip couldn't have actually done unless we had a much bigger Commodore chip and we could have put all in one. Like for the A3000 expansion bus, I had to have an address decoder because I couldn't get all the addresses into an 84-pin chip when I was dealing with 2 different 32-bit buses, as you might expect.
Right. So I was talking with Charpentier, and I was teasing him, going, "Ha ha! I had access to 48-pin chips. You didn't." Ha ha. God, I still, knowing what I know now, the one thing I do different, Dave, is I'd go to like Diorio and those guys, and I'd say, we need to do something about the grounding of the VIC chip.
Yeah,
we need to lower the impedance, because that's where the gel bars come from and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem when you've got 48 pins or even 40 pins. You've got you usually back in those days you had 1 ground pin probably.
Right, and it was on the far corner.
Yeah, of course it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The inductance goes up as the distance increases.
Yep. And it wasn't.
There's no way we can fix that post, is there?
No.
Yeah.
Dang. Let's see.
It's not like you could have a Verilog is love, Verilog is life. It's not like you could have a center. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, love is like a snowmobile that flips, pinning you underneath. At night, the ice weasels come. I'm sorry. That's my stanza on love. You can tell I've been burnt before.
You burnt? I can't believe it, Bill.
So I'm trying to read these things here. If it looks like I'm doing athletics, I'm trying to look past a microphone stand. What's this stench like code smell?
Carl Hamilton?
Yeah, Carl. We see Carl a lot here.
Oh, yeah, 3DOs. So have you spoken with Dale Luck at all? Or, do you hang out with him at all?
Dave?
Either one of you?
What?
Oh, well, I was talking with Dale at West, right? Remember, he was right next to you?
Yeah, it's hard to hang out with people who live 3,000 miles away, like on a regular basis. I did hang out with RJ in Germany.
Yeah.
That was good. Well, we hadn't seen each other in a few years.
Well, cool.
Well, Dale showed me his warehouse, and he still has a bunch of Amiga 1000s.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen his warehouse in person, but I have heard the many mythological tales about it. Yeah.
Well, he's got a ton of 3DO development machines, which are just like stacks of boards standing up on end. No, but my favorite is the DeLorean Amiga 1000, which does not look like a DeLorean anymore.
Okay.
It looks like a very rusty car.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't exactly stainless.
Yes, apparently not.
Stainful.
Yeah. Well, so I have been told by people who know that I will be at Amy West next year, which I've never been to. So
you got to do the full circuit. Yeah, is what we did this year. Circuit. Oh, yeah, we had because we were getting together a month later. It's like you'd start a sentence and then finish it a month later. It was we hit a real rhythm there.
I was just so busy this year. I think that I'd been home one weekend around September 8th, and then last weekend was the first time I'd made it home for a whole weekend. I've been to Amiga Ireland. Unfortunately, with Amiga Ireland, I had to leave for my plane like in the middle of drinking. It was terrible.
Oh, no.
It was 2 a.m. We were at a pub that was older than the United States. And it's like, oh, I have to leave to catch my bus to Dublin.
Was that the time that you went instead of me?
No, that was Amiga. That was Amiga Ireland. That was the only place I went in 2020, other than to my beach house, which is now my full-time house. But it was like that. You know, that was January, and then by March everything was going away. So,
right. Hey, so you mentioned that C128, the new board. Actually, I've got one here somewhere. They don't need the bodge wire on them. Did you hear why?
I know they don't, but I didn't hear why.
I threw another 2 layers at it just to run a bodge wire.
It's a 4-layer board. Well, I mean, that might also help with the ground plane.
Grounding, yes. First thing I thought of, oh, thank you for lowering my impedance.
Yeah, they're like, no, we just did that for the bodge wire.
Well, he's kind of brilliant, so I had to laugh at that, the stuff. He opened up the MMU and found the flip-flops that I had forgotten about, but they're part of that pin called VIX Fix. I had created a flip-flop while Diorio read the chip, and we read the PLA and put flip-flops in the PLA after we had the initial die cut. But I'd forgotten that. And then they find it on the die, and it's like, wow. And you could see it was like paper clips and glue hold the flip-flops in, you know.
Did I ever work?
So was there a plan for that?
A what?
Was there a plan for that? Like, do you remember what you were going to use them for?
Oh, no, I did it in response to a bug in the VIC chip. So there's a pin on the MMU called VIC Fix that's like grounded now. But at one time I had to do it in a sloppy through it way to make a delay. Then we went to a hybrid, and then we went to the flops on the thing. And then I forgot about it. So it's cool talking to Charpentier, Dave, because he's like, oh, then we had like Eric Yang, and I'm like, yeah, I know Eric Yang. He did the PLA for me. You know, it's like all these people you and I know, just time shifted. You know, Shiraz and those guys.
Right. Yes, just a little bit like that. That whole previous generation.
Yeah.
Did I ever do anything with the PCI bus on the Amiga? I didn't, but it would basically work just like Zorro does, only it would be PCI. I mean, it's, you know, auto-config is auto-config. The PCI was the first PC industry thing to do that stuff correctly. Yeah, Windows never quite adjusted to that for real, but
no, it didn't.
But if you put it on, it would work correctly. I think even Linux can do it.
That's interesting to hear you say that, because like I've been reading up on how Zorro handles all of its bus transactions and stuff like that, and the number one thing I keep coming across is this weird direct comparison between PCI and Zorro, and just sort of like saying that essentially Zorro is proto PCI.
Well, you know, it was simple and clean, and that's what Intel did. But Intel had, you know, Intel pursued it from the point of view of we're going to make chips, and everybody's going to have a chip to do this, because of course they're the chip people. But you know, for the next generation stuff, it was actually made a lot of sense. We were looking at it from the point of view of, you know, I want to build a bus that can do everything I want, everything that everybody else needs. But also, I know who's building boards for Amiga, so they had to be able to do it as simply as possible with PALs or maybe a small FPGA near the end. But it wasn't, you know, or CPLD or something. It wasn't like we were going to have a custom chip that was an Amiga bus controller. Except we almost did, because there was a secret mode in the last version of the Buster chip that allowed it to be a card resident controller. Except that. When that chip came out, they decided, it was Dave's, like, I keep making new Buster chips, because I had, like, the first revision that I was trying to basically come up with a chip that was almost double the size, but I didn't change the font number because I was just like, oh, we need another revision. So we were up to like revision 13, but it was really revision 5. And a lot of it was because the tools we had just were like, I was biting off way more than I could chew. The tools we had were not good, were not good for simulating the way I had designed this thing. And also I was planning, this was something I was supposed to live with for the next 10 years. If I knew that like the A3000 was the last architecture, it would have been a lot simpler.
Right.
But the problem was when I got my last generation Buster back, they had Commodore had been making channeled gates, and this is gate array, Commodore's own in-house gate array system, which is why you could get it turned around in a month, which was kind of nice to be able to get a whole new chip in a month. But they went to a Sea of Gates design.
Yeah.
And the Sea of Gates design originally ran at about 1/4 speed.
They ran Wolf Slayer as the auto router on that.
Yeah.
Huh. So what is the difference? What's a Sea of Gates design? What do you mean by that? It's like
tripping over your own feet to get to your next place to put your foot.
Okay.
It's Dave, correct me. I'm going off real old memory, but it's really it's just the physical. Isn't it mostly about the physical layout of channels and interconnection groups?
It's the channels are basically a regular thing, and the Sea of Gates is much more configurable and all that. Yeah. But it's like it's harder to route, and it's and apparently it was harder to make because they didn't go fast enough. So I had the one chance to test this thing out. I had built a card called the Gemini card, which had two 68030s, 2 math chips, 2 memory controllers, and each with 4 megabytes of RAM. And that was for we were going to do some experiments with multiprocessing. And so I was running the Buster chip, the brand new Buster chip in bus, in card bus mode, and if I slowed things way down, it kind of worked, but it just you couldn't really run it at 1/4 speed. So it was, and that was like there was a window that was in '93 when everything was kind of going to shit. And it was also that week or that month or so, Randall Jessup had the time to start playing around with the multitasking code or the multiprocessing code. And because these cards didn't work because they relied on this chip, I thought, I didn't know that they were going to pull this on me. I thought it wasn't actually that much of a big change to the design. I just threw that in there kind of at the last minute and said, okay, if I put it into this illegal state, it will go into this mode and it will work just like it did, except kind of reversing its way around. It already knows how to talk 68030, already knows how to talk Zora 3. But at 1/4 speed, it wasn't going to work. So that was kind of the end of that project because we had to move on to other things as the walls were falling down and
right. It's the flames and
the zombies showing up at the back door.
When did you outpace MOS or CGS, whatever they became called?
CSG, yeah.
CSG. What year do you think you guys had to start doing overseas because you'd outpaced?
Well, I guess the first one that was the first mainstream chip was Lisa in the Pandora / AGA chipset, AA, whatever you want to call it. That required CMOS, and Commodore could make it in 1.5 micron CMOS, but it was low yield and
it was dirty. Yeah,
it was dirty. Yeah. So what they really wanted was HP's 1 micron CMOS process, and it worked great in that process. But of course, we had this weird management that had tried to kill the whole project for about 6 months. So once they realized they were depending on this for the next generation of products, they kind of did a mad scramble and realized that when you're, especially in 1992, when you're contract manufacturing a chip, which of course almost nobody did back then, you better put your orders in way in advance. So they couldn't just pull the same kind of last minute shit they pulled on CSG. And so we were heading into Christmas of '92 with all of these things that people wanted, like Amiga 1200s and Amiga 4000s, and no chips.
Oh.
And then they had the A600, which nobody wanted because they wanted the 500 still, because the 600 was 600 had started life as the 300. It was something George Robbins had been cooking up in his lab, and with all you never knew what George was going to be working on, and he was making an even cheaper.
Neither did his boss. Yeah.
No. Well, it didn't matter because I worked on a lot of stuff, and eventually when I was working for Jeff Frank, not so much, but when I was working for Jeff Porter, I always let him know what I was working on eventually.
Right.
And, because eventually somebody would have to sign a check to get some boards made.
I didn't realize you had worked for Jeff Frank. My apologies.
They brought him in as basically the replacement for Jeff Porter, the head of new product development for at the end, because he was a PC guy, and
right.
the PCs had already been canceled, so he had no other purpose at the company. And he brought in when Bill Sidney's the ex-IBM guy. Bill Sidney's was brought in as the great white hope to replace Henry Rubin, because he was apparently somebody everybody had dirt on him, I guess, was the main reason. But I mean, this brilliant guy. I mean, his career, like, he was the guy who green-lighted copying the ROM when he was at Franklin, and they were trying to make it an Apple II clone.
Right.
And apparently, oh yeah, just copy the ROM. You can do that. Apparently you can't. He was also the guy.
Well, you can, but
yeah. And then
who did the PC Junior?
That was Sidney's. Yeah, that was Sidney's.
Yeah,
that's why. So in '92, I mean, I've been working on this Amiga 3000 Plus for a while. It first started running operating system, Windows, and everything in February of '91. We didn't ship any AA system, any Pandora system until the fall of '92. That was an unusually long period of time. And yes, they were developing software, but it was because the new management came in and basically decided that everything that Porter and Rubin were developing needed to be delayed or canceled because they didn't want them to look good.
Right.
It was one of those stupid company moves that it explains why startup companies get there and the big companies don't.
Right.
You're playing stupid politics that end up killing the company.
I couldn't imagine working there during that time. I couldn't imagine staying employed there during that time either, because I wasn't a very stable individual back then.
No. Well, I foolishly thought that there was going to be a technological problem for that as long as I waited these guys out, because I'm thinking logically. I'm thinking, like, these guys can't last very long. They're going to get fired, and they did, but it took too long. Right.
Yeah. Then there was that. Oh! I just found a document the other day, Dave. I was thinking of the C128. How we slid in there in a window where there was just nobody in our way, so we took a window. And I just found a document that was written by Kong Su, and it had a whole page of AND gates, NAND gates, OR gates, NOR gates, and it's to set up the CAS and all this. In other words, done Kong's way, not our way, like 1 or 2 gate delay, right?
Yeah.
But but it was called C128. I had thought it was called a D128 before we got a hold of it, but apparently not. I've been saying something wrong by saying we named it the C128. So yeah, it was already called that.
Okay. Yeah, I had always heard of a D128. I know there had been a couple different different attempts at making a C64 follow-on. I mean, they had the one with the 6809 in it, or 65 or something. Right. It was it was just like or no, it was the 16500 series chip that they had in one of the B systems that did memory banking. So they said, because that's the way they did it before, that's the only way to ever do memory banking.
Modified indirect Y commands.
Yeah.
I remember seeing where we had the B machines and the D machines, and you'd walk by and touch the keys a couple times, but it's not like somebody said, and then Commodore's B machine ushered in the era of, you know, nobody was there telling us F and G's, you know, the past history.
Right.
And then we were just so damn busy ourselves that we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff there that I just never, you know, I mean, I knew these machines existed, but how they came to be.
Right. Right. Yeah, remember people like John Ramage when we got there? He's a good engineer, but he's a business design engineer or an industrial engineer. So we did have a strata for business, a strata for consumer at one time. What happened, Dave? Did they get combined, or you know? Remember, you and me were kind of consumerish back in the 8000.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, you had the Z8000 group for a while,
right?
After we bought Amiga, that kind of like the Commodore, that was 85 was not a good year for Commodore.
No, we were hunting the Z8000 programmers.
Yeah,
they got wind that we were after them, and they would like duck down the hallways and stuff. And yeah we had a good time hunting them.
Yeah, but it was so when Commodore completed the acquisition of Amiga, they basically decided we're only going to have one 16-bit machine, and they axed the Z8000 stuff, which was finally working. That was another one of those. Right. That was another one of those where there had been multiple teams and they could never get it working. Then you got George Robbins and Bob Welland on it, and all of a sudden it's all good, and they've got Coherent up on it, and they've got the megapixel display.
Oh, that's a great combination of engineers. I didn't know that.
It was running. Yeah, I mean, it was Rico Tudor, who eventually was in, you know, doing software on it, and Johann George, the same guys who did Amiga Unix. On Coherent. It was a fabulous system. I would have had one on my desk, you know, for you know, if we had CAD tools for it, you know, eventually. So you know, it made no sense to me. It was basically a Sun 2.
So
you know, it wasn't, you know, it was even further out of Commodore's wheelhouse than the Amiga was. Right. But you know, sometimes you have to grow.
Right. Was Dave around when the C64DX C65 was in development?
Yeah. Nobody was paying much attention to that, but yeah. I was there until the bitter end. Well, I was there until June after the bankruptcy. So that's 94.
Right.
And then I was getting a lot of pressure from my buddies at Scala to come work for them. And I saw no future at Commodore. Maybe we're going to sell it to somebody. Maybe we weren't, but it didn't look good. Oh, about a week after I left, they got out contracts, and everyone who's remaining was going to get paid double to stay around until September.
Right. And so, I quit the first time that we thought that I thought Commodore was going down the tubes. Yeah. And I know I didn't want to be looking for a job at the same time as all you brilliant guys. So I was like, I jumped first. Then I looked for the low hanging fruit.
Yeah. But we got while I was at Scala getting paid less money because of course it was a startup, and we're, you know, you're getting stock and everything. Greg and Fred were building Greg's deck and getting paid double, and only showing up on Fridays for dog and pony shows with people who might be trying to buy the technology.
Right.
So I'm not sure that was the best decision, but I still had the idea that if I'm not engineering, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be happy just sitting around collecting lots of money. I mean, I guess you could get used to it, but not.
Then your skills rust.
Certainly not at that age.
Right.
Yeah.
So Dave, as I mentioned, you were not my first choice to be on tonight.
I know.
I actually called Berlin. So Berlin is in the play Addams Family, and I'm trying to figure out who he would play. Can you see him as a cousin It? You know,
no,
6'8".
No. You rang.
Yeah, that's probably who he's playing, but you never know with this guy. You remember him picking up women at Hollywood, Halloween parties. He'd be dressed as Frankenstein, then go around lifting women by their head.
Oh no!
I
Yeah,
also,
little feet going like this.
I also remember him picking up women at Hard Rock Cafe in Tokyo, but it was a different kind of picking up.
Right. Right. Let's see.
Well, I think we're getting close to time at this point, Bill.
Yep, I think so. So
yeah, it's been 50 minutes already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Dave, I want to
go for about an hour.
Jumping in like this. This is always fun.
Sure. Yeah. Like you like I said, you picked the right weekend, the right day, because it's like I've been so busy, and my wife's away on a bicycle tour this weekend up in Gettysburg. So I don't even have to say, "Hey, Liz, I'm not going to tonight because I've got to talk with nerds."
Not heard again. So very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Jim,
yeah. Oh,
thanks for jumping in there. Also, again today, we're streaming on your channel, as Retrocombs mentioned, and on my channel. Yeah. We're just streaming fools. We're just done married. Yeah. So we'll have to try. I'll have to try and get Shiraz on here sometime. Shiraz Shivshi.
That would be an interesting one.
Yeah, I'd watch that. So, well, cool. Everybody,
you have to participate in it.
Yeah, y'all have a good rest of the weekend, and maybe we'll catch you here next Saturday night. June, next Saturday, maybe?
Yeah, I think we can do next Saturday for sure.
Maybe do a museum.
I think that's in the cards for sure. It actually was in the cards for tonight, but when Dave mentioned that he was free, I figured,
unannounced, just banged on the door, with his homebrew beer. All right, y'all have a good night.
Next weekend, Sam's out. See you guys.
Good night.